toxic masculinity.
Mexican loves Speedy Gonzales.
All right, this is actually, I think, probably my favorite story of the day, folks. So if I lost you on the last one, I apologize. Hopefully I'll get you back on this one. I love this story, and I'll tell you why. Well, for a variety of reasons. But I have a good friend who's Mexican, and he actually called me the other day complaining about this. And he's like, every Mexican I know is like pissed off because they're trying to cancel Speedy Gonzales. And he's like, we love Speedy Gonzales. Like he's like, do not take our Speedy Gonzales away from us. And I'm not really going to read this story because it's essentially just that, like, essentially white people are trying to tell people of color, Hispanics, black people, Muslims, Indians, Asian people, whomever, leftist, white, mostly I think women, white, middle class or wealthy women for the most part, are basically telling Hispanics what they should be pissed off about or what they should be happy about. Like, this is racist and you should hate it. And here's where I think things become a little bit of a problem, is that this has actually worked for decades with black people, right? So and the reason is because you have certain black leaders who I would refer to as race baiters, right? They're people who make their fortune stoking hatred, stoking hysteria, stoking fear about racism in America, basically trying to convince the black people throughout the country, black Americans, that white Americans hate them. And so any little thing they can find, they'll use for that purpose. And so you get these like white academics and these like white middle class women who, you know, some of them probably fairly young, just out of college or maybe even in college. And they're like looking for things. They're trying to figure out in what way can we take this actually perfectly innocuous thing and distort it into something that we can present as offensive. That we can say, you should be offended by this, and you know, everybody should be outraged and hate white people for it, right? And what they'll do is they'll present something like that, like the term black, for some reason in like the 90s or maybe the late 80s, was deemed to be racist. You couldn't say black. You had to say African American. That became the thing. Like, we have to say African American. And Jesse Jackson took this and he was like, yes, we're going to take African American. That's going to be the new thing. If you ever say black, you're a racist and it's terrible. And people went with it. And if you said black, some people were offended, and it was ridiculous, right? And we've seen this over and over and over again. And so we finally got to a point where now they're doing it with the Hispanic community, right? They did it with this term Latino. Latino is now gendered. So now you have to say Latinx. You have to say Latinx. And Hispanics, Mexicans, people from South America, anybody who is a Latino, who would consider themselves a Latino, they're saying, no, we don't like Latinx. That sounds stupid. We're Latinos. F off. And I love that. They're actually standing up to them, because the left isn't used to people pushing back. They're used to saying, this is what you should be offended by, and people going, okay, thank you. We will be offended by that. And then acting on that thing. The Mexicans are being told, this is what you're going to be offended by. And the Mexicans are going, okay, thank you very much. Screw that. Get the hell away from me. You're an idiot. And I love that. They're pushing back. They're punching back. They're saying, no, we don't like Latinx. Screw you. No, you know what? We actually like Speedy Gonzales. Believe it or not, we like the little mouse. Okay? And I have a great story about this, actually. I have a great personal story about this, what's funny?
You said you're not going to be too much on it because we still have 3 articles.
No, I don't care. This is a good story.
That's what I'm doing every day.
What are you talking about? My stories are good, dang it. I'll just get a video of you laughing at me for a while.
Okay.
Okay, so all right, so I got a great story about this. So I used to be on movie sets a lot, and I would interact with various people, and I was in one project. I think it was a movie, and I was a patron in a strip club, right? And which was really funny because I've actually never been to a strip club in real life. A lot of guys out there are going, "You're not a real man," but I don't. I find the whole concept of the strip club disturbing. Like if I'm going to get a girl, I don't need to pay for it. That's always been my position. So I've never been to a strip club, but I had to go for this movie. I was one of the strip club patrons. That was my job in the movie, and there were strippers, doing the pole dancing stuff, and then there were like waitresses that would serve people, drinks and stuff like that. And what are you looking at?
Comments?
Stop looking at comments. Look here. I'm telling you a story, woman. Very disrespectful. Look at it. She's my wife. She should be more respectful. Anyway, look. So I'm in this strip club, which is very uncomfortable for me. But then there's all these beautiful women walking around serving drinks and serving food, or pretending to, for the show. And I end up talking to. There end up being this this table full of girls, because there's a lot of breaks, right? And so when this happens, naturally, a gentleman surrounded by beautiful women is going to be a little bit flirtatious. He's going to want to tell stories. He's going to want to, and so I start doing accents, as you do. If you could do accents and people think it's funny, sometimes it comes up as like a thing to do, right? And so I start doing like an Australian accent, a British accent, whatever. And this girl was a Mexican girl, and she was like Miss like a Hollywood 2016 or something like that. Like she had just won some beauty contest, and she was trying to tell me that she just won this beauty contest. She was really excited about it. She was showing everybody her Instagram and how proud she was of winning this thing. And I was a little bit nervous about this, because she suddenly goes, "Can you do a Mexican accent?" And I can do a Mexican accent, but I can only do like the Speedy Gonzales accent. Like I can only do the accent from the mice from Speedy Gonzales, which is, to me, this like exaggerated cartoon, almost like stereotype version of an accent that is probably one of those things that people have been conditioned to believe is offensive, even though it isn't. So I was like, yeah, I can do one version of a Mexican accent, but I think it's kind of probably racist. And she's like, well, what do you mean? How is it racist? And I go, well, it's like the Speedy Gonzales accent. And she goes, oh, I love Speedy Gonzales. I want to hear the Speedy Gonzales accent. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do the Speedy Gonzales accent. And everybody at the table is like, come on, do the Speedy Gonzales accent. So I'm being pressured. And finally, I'm just like, oh, fine. So I'm like, hey, I am Speedy Gonzales. And everybody at the table just starts dying. They're like, I love that. That's the best. And then I realized that accent isn't really offensive to anyone. Somehow that didn't get into the culture. It didn't get into the culture that talking like this is actually not racist at all. Everybody could talk like this, and he is fine. Because it's just a fun voice. It's a fun voice to do. It's something we all got from our childhood. It's a positive thing. And here's the thing. Okay, I actually think this actually is kind of a racist cartoon, right? I think it does come from a racial stereotype, because I think it comes from this idea that Mexicans are like slow and lazy. I think that's where it comes from. And so Speedy Gonzales is sort of ironically fast, right? He's sort of like the anomaly, the weird, this cat thinks, oh, all the Mexican mice are slow, I'll go after them. But then you got Speedy Gonzales, who's like unexpectedly fast, and that's where the humor comes from. I think that's the concept of where that comes from, because you have like Slowpoke Rodriguez, who is like very slow. Everything he does is very slow. And then Speedy Gonzales is very fast, fastest mouse in Mexico. But the funny thing is, it's like, it doesn't really matter that was the stereotype that they were drawing from. I don't think. Because even so, they didn't do this cartoon as like, Mexicans are horrible people, we hate them. They made these characters that they clearly loved. These Mexican mice were the good guys. The cats were the bad guys. And this Mexican hero, Speedy Gonzales, was like the most beloved character. I mean, he was just like, everybody loves Speedy Gonzales. White, black, Mexican, it doesn't matter. You like him. He's the hero. He's the good guy. He's great. It doesn't matter if it comes from this stupid stereotype. It doesn't matter, okay? The truth is, Speedy Gonzales is awesome. Every Mexican loves him, and I love him, and most Americans love him growing up with him. And he's this is one of the first things that I've seen that the left has tried to cancel, that because it's something that the group they were trying to cancel it for actually loved, they stood up against it and said, no, we're not going to accept that. Screw you. That doesn't get canceled. and now it isn't. They're all standing up against it. You see here in the New York Post, Mexican loves Speedy Gonzales, and other commentary. This commentary about in the article, but this is all about how like the guy from who does the voice. The guy who does the voice of Speedy Gonzales, I think he's a comedian who goes by like Fluffy. He goes by the name Fluffy. And he's saying, what, are you going to cancel me? He's like, I'm Mexican. He's like, I love Speedy Gonzales. And so I think that it might not be getting canceled. But I'm not going to read the article. I just wanted to give you guys my story of, and look, you meet a lot of Mexican people when you live in California. You just do. And occasionally Speedy Gonzales does come up, weirdly. And every Mexican person I've ever spoke to where we talked about Speedy Gonzales or we talked about this kind of like funny caricature accent, they all love Speedy Gonzales and they all love the accent. And I've never had a problem with it. And we should all be able to do funny accents of whatever, Chinese, Mexican, African, German, Scottish, English, New York, Tennessee, whatever accent that you can do in a kind of a funny, fun way. Just do it. Don't worry about the racial stereotype thing. This is just a way that people use to divide us. But in reality, if you're doing it out of love or you're doing it to make people laugh or to have fun, I think you should. I think you should just go for it. And we shouldn't always be afraid that people are going to be offended, because that was a mistake that I made when I was in that strip club. Anyway, you don't have anything to say about this because you didn't get Speedy Gonzales as a child, did you?
Mm-mm.
Did you have any? Did you have like a really fast Ukrainian mouse that was going up against Russian cats? That's a joke. I didn't think you would actually have that because they're on your southern border. Okay. All right. So you're done with that. We're done with this story?
Yeah.
All right. Would you like to read the next story?
Why did Biden give Joe Manchin's wife a job?
Yeah, this is a fantastic story because Joe Manchin is Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.